Hello everyone. How you doing? You alright? Good. My name's John.
My name's Will.
I'm from the Home Office.
I'm from DWP.
Yeah, we both work for the Government Operational Research Service. We'd like to tell you a bit about what we do. We have opportunities for work placements and graduates and summer placements. So yeah, we'll on to the next slide. Sort of explain who we are, what we do for GAWS, and yeah, a bit about what you might be doing as a student with us. So first, I'll explain a bit about what OR is. It can be considered the science of decision making. So we work in government, and it's important that decisions are made based on the best available evidence. For example, so when you would have all heard about the nurses' strikes in recent months, it's important that the decisions. Sorry, if. Oh, wrong slide. Okay. So, if we consider nurses, we know that people will continue to get ill and have accidents. But before the strike takes place, there'll be research done to determine how many staff are required to provide a minimum safe level of care. In the private sector, companies like Amazon and Tesco's will use operational research methods to optimise storage in their warehouses or their routes for their fleet of vehicles. That's the sort of thing that OR is. So it can be applied to a wide range of different fields and sectors. But what is the Government Operational Research Service? We are the biggest employer of operational researchers in the UK, and we make up one of the four main analytical professions within the government analysis function. So operational researchers do decision analysis type stuff. Government Economic Service look at the economic impacts of those decisions. The Statistical Service look at relationships and trends and data and distribute that data to us. And Government Social Research look at things like human behaviour and the societal impacts of these decisions. So, a brief overview of the political system. We're all voters, I don't know if we're all voters, but we all vote for our local MPs in elections. Those MPs can be Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, they all represent a party. These MPs debate the government and Parliament about the decisions and policies to be made and implemented. And civil servants advise those MPs, well, advise the government of the day based on all different departments. So I'm from the Home Office. We have a lot of dealings with the Ministry of Justice, talking about the legal system and the impacts decisions we make in the Home Office will have in the justice system. Will works at Department for Work and Pensions, who will have a lot of dealings with health and social care. And there's a big mix of information going around government we're all sharing. So how many staff in the civil service? I don't know, that's quite a weird question. If I get these questions on a quiz, it kind of annoys me. Like how far is it from Land's End to John O'Groats? I don't know, it's just a number. What can we do to estimate that? So I know the NHS is the biggest employer in the UK. They're not civil servants. They're about 2 million. So about a quarter of those, about a quarter of those work in the civil service. So, the civil service is about a quarter of the size of the NHS. Anyone know the difference between a civil servant and a public servant or public sector? It's up on board now. Civil service work with government of the day and deal with those. Public sector is more things like teachers, nurses, and work for the public good, but they're not necessarily informing the government, or they're not an arm of the government, some say. So, sort of giving it away, but which of the following these are civil servants? We operational researchers, we are policy makers, benefits administrators, all work on behalf of the government, whereas paramedics, NHS, Air Force officers, military, RAF, and teachers are employed by their local authority or schools in their area. So here's a list of the sort of skills that might be useful for an operational researcher. I don't know if you guys are doing I imagine there's a lot of numerate parts of your degrees, studying maths, physics, whatever. So we use a lot of these different tools to, as part of our arsenal when it comes to help make decisions. And we're looking at trying to solve problems such as the ones in red. So we're trying to solve climate change. I don't know how that's going. I think that's quite ambitious. Improving schools, knife crime, all of these problems are in our laps as operational researchers, and these are the sort of things we're working on trying to improve in the world. We come from a wide range of backgrounds, from astrophysics to zoology, economics, engineering, physics, maths, as long as there's some numerate element of your degree. We have undergraduates. I came in as an undergraduate, masters, PhDs, all different grades and levels are welcome to apply that rules. And there's quite a wide range of, quite a lot of overlap between the different professions. So where we are looking at, potentially like supply chain things and stuff might be more specialist. Social researchers do things like questionnaire design and look at qualitative analysis. And also, economists are doing more cost-benefit analysis and, like I said, the economic impacts. And statisticians are doing more like inference on populations and, like I said, distributing that data to the other analysts. That kind of thing. We don't all work out of London. I mean, I do, but we are distributed all across the country. And the work you do in Sheffield or Newcastle, Glasgow, is just as important and high impact as it is the stuff going on in London. So there's no need to stay here to work. You can go back home if you have to. I know Department for Transport are in Hastings, DWP have places in Sheffield, Manchester, Newcastle. So yeah, we're all over the country doing important work. So my background is a bit weird. I left school in 2006. I decided I wanted to be a rock star. It didn't work out very well, but I thought maybe I could do audio engineering. I could be next to rock stars. It's quite a creative job, but quite often I had to work unpaid, and it's quite monotonous trying to tune a kick drum in a studio for hours. I got quite bored. But I like doing the live engineering stuff. That was really interesting and quite high action, fast paced. So I decided to become a tree surgeon somehow. Again, high pace, fast action, got to play with chainsaws and swing around trees, quite a physical job. But eventually I sort of figured out the risk to reward ratio wasn't very good, and there wasn't much progression, wasn't far to go after that. So when I finished halfway through my tree surgery, I decided to study maths at Open University, and then I decided to take that on full time, and once I graduated last year, I came into the Operational Research Service. I chose Gauze because it might be quite egotistical, but I wanted the work I did to have an impact, and I think the work I'm doing now does. I think it's important work that needs to be done. The variety of work within Gauze is immense. You can work in health and social care, transport, Department for Work and Pensions, in the Ministry of Defence. There's all different types of roles available for analysts. The network of knowledge is huge. Like the number of staff there is insane, and the work, their abilities and all the knowledge there is really important. I didn't want to work in just in an office on my own doing analysis, or I didn't want to work for a big company just increasing the margins of some big corporate entity. I wanted to do important stuff, and the benefits are pretty good. I'm a lot better paid now than I was when I was a tree surgeon. The flexi time I get is really good. I only go to the office twice a week, and I get really good holiday, pension, all that good stuff. So I can't recommend it enough. I'm going to hand over to Will, who will.
Would you like to see the slides?
Oh yeah, sure.
Hi everyone. So I was in your position not too long ago, sat at the other end, so I understand how daunting it can feel to try and apply for jobs, so hopefully we're here to make this a bit easier for you. So what I'm going to cover is just the breadth of stuff that I've been able to do, and then I'll talk a bit about how you apply and some hints and tips for the application form. So I started out, like you, I did maths and sort of numerate degrees at university, and I did statistical analysis focus. So in terms of stuff I took from my degree to write on the application form, it's often stuff that you're familiar with. So for the technical example, I wrote about a piece of code that I'd written to do with machine learning, and for the achieving impact with analysis, I wrote about a coursework report. So in that sense, the application form is quite accessible. You don't have to have had loads of internships and worked at Goldman Sachs for 2 weeks or something to get in. The good thing about the application form is it also prizes the voluntary work that you do outside of uni as well. So if you've ever done voluntary type stuff like youth work, homelessness or tutoring or anything like that, those are also really great examples that you can use on your application form as well. So I think the main message from this first part is that the application form is quite accessible. You don't have to do some mental game to get in and compete against tens of thousands of people. So that's why I found it quite good. Now, in the first 2 years, I was very fortunate to have quite a quickly progressing career, and I managed to do a lot of stuff. So one of the things I was proud of was I'd never learned Java before, but I'd learned Java on the job to basically make a micro simulation model from scratch over the course of a year, and had opportunities to line manage a placement student. And that's something, kind of experience that you can get in the civil service, is that getting line management experience early on in your career is sort of something that's valued. I did quite a lot of high-profile work presenting analysis to people who might, who run a significant part of DWP's services, people who make decisions, and lots of people's livelihoods depend on the outcome. And I think I was surprised at how much freedom and responsibility I was given to go in my own direction, present and take the initiative, and do some really good stuff. So I'll just cover the last thing, which I'll kind of do now. So my current role is that I'm working on what's called the policy simulation model, which is a cool thing I can talk about later on. But sort of within 2 years, the career opportunities I've had has allowed me to go from sort of a junior grade to sort of team leader. And I don't know how many other organisations you'd be able to get those kinds of opportunities. Another good thing is that you're encouraged to do things other than your day job and get involved in lots of other things. So corporate contributions are widely encouraged. So one of the things I'm doing at the moment is developing a cross-government modelling and forecasting community. So I have contacts in about 18 different departments. There's also lots of opportunities for conferences, social events. You guys are in London, so you have sort of the novelty of working in Whitehall near Westminster. Big Ben and everything, and lots of opportunities to mentor junior staff and develop people skills as well. So why is being a government OR so good? Well, the first bit is, as John said, is flexible working. You have a set amount of hours to do, but as long as you do those hours, it doesn't really matter when you do them. If something happens, you need to be out of the office for 2 hours, let your manager know, and then you can make those 2 hours up any other time. We've had some cases where someone worked enough hours over the course of a fortnight to have every other Friday off. So the flexible working is quite flexible. The career progression is very straightforward. So sometimes you might find at private companies that in order to get promotion, you have to work ridiculous hours, do lots of informal favours for the manager and please people. But promotions are all run on an application form interview basis. It's done on fair and open competition, so everyone has got the same chance of being promoted if you're capable. There's a massive focus on having supportive colleagues, well-being, diversity and inclusion, of course. Having lots of challenging and impactful work every day, and there's also, ORs are in demand. There aren't enough of them, so you'd be coming into somewhere where you're highly valued. And finally, you may not want to work in London your whole life. If you want to move to Manchester or Leeds, do something completely different, it's quite easy to change office and just change your life up for a few years. And I worked for a bit in Manchester and enjoyed that a lot. Thank you. Next slide, please. So, I think I've covered what an OR analyst does, but that is much the same as what an OR student would do. No one is going to say to you, don't do this because you're a placement student. You're kind of treated like you're one of the staff. And as I said, there's lots of other things you can do as well aside from your day job to develop people skills, networking, build contacts, and things like that. Next slide, please. Now, yes, I guess what can you gain? So a lot of the time, companies might focus on the technical skills that you can gain. So if you come to us, well, you do programming, you can do this and that, but of particular emphasis in the civil service is communication and leadership, and being able to develop those skills is something that's equally as prized as the technical skills as well. There's also lots of ongoing learning and development opportunities, so just been to a couple of conferences recently, there are lots of learning and development seminars around. There's also sort of the social and professional networking, and I know that for the placement year, there's a Parliament tour thrown in and a boat party on the River Thames as well. Some of you guys perked up at that, glad you're all away. So yeah, and I think as well, you can get mentors who will sort of coach you through the year and help you to get a permanent job role, which is kind of the ultimate goal of the placement scheme, is to mentor students towards getting a permanent job that they can come back to. Next slide, please. So this is just kind of more of what I've covered before, but yeah, there's the salary between 22 and 26,000, which is fairly generous for a placement scheme. The pension scheme, not many people go into this, but this is something that you will consider important as you get older. An average pension has an employer contribution of between 5 and 10%, but a civil service pension has an employer contribution of 27%. So it's 5 times better than the average pension. So over a long career in the civil service, you could set yourself up very nicely for retirement as well. Next slide, please. So applications are open for placements. We've got all of these departments on offer, I think some others as well. The only eligibility is that you've got a numerate degree, and I think the official guidelines are about 50% numerate, so we haven't just necessarily had maths and statistics people, we've had people from chemistry, geography, and so on. You must also be returning to university, so it's a sandwich year type placement. It's not a graduate scheme, and it's not open to first years. It's open to second years. They're open now, and there's sort of an interview process that I can talk a bit more about. It's 12:23 now, so I think it'd be a good opportunity to pause for any questions, and then I'll give you some hints and tips on how to crack the application form. So, has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask?
Aside from year-long, do you also have summer placements?
We do. We have summer placements as well. Yeah. Yep.
How long are the summer placement?
Sorry?
How long are they?
The summer placement.
Yeah.
The summer placement. I think we've got a slide on the summer placement.
Yes.
Yeah. I think if you press resume, press resume slideshow. Right. Yeah. Press that and then just find the.
Yeah.
Is it in the annex?
No, it's
Or is it? So I think we won't. I'll cover the detail in a bit. There we go. Summer students. So got a number of departments. So I think that doesn't actually answer the question, which is quite annoying. But I think they're about 3 months. So you sort of start June time, and then finish sort of by the time you go back to uni. And they try to stop things like overlapping with term time as much as they possibly can. Any other questions? Okay, do you want to go on to the application form now then? So I think one of the main benefits of applying to course in the civil service is it's probably the most straightforward application form around. There are essentially 2 behaviours that you get assessed on. So the first one is working together, so that's testing your ability to work in a team. And the other one is managing a quality service, so things like planning, managing your time and your workload and so on. And the descriptions for the behaviours are all online, so it's kind of set out exactly what we want. And there's quite a formulaic approach to demonstrating the competency, so if you know what the behaviour is, so it's like working together, you know what your example is, you follow this format, so start with the situation. So if I can think back to my application where I used homelessness volunteering as the example. So the situation is I led homelessness outreach teams in Manchester. The task, I needed to expand the outreach programme and get people in and manage that service. This is how I did it. How did I manage that service? How did I deliver that service to my customers? And what was the result? Well, we got 3-4 people in, made a difference to their lives as well. If any of you have done NCS as a team leader, had the pleasure of doing that, the dubious pleasure of being an NCS team leader, I used that on my application form. That's about the most useful thing I got out of NCS, it's fair to say. So I think the overall message is the application form is super simple. It's probably one of the most straightforward ones you're going to get. There are no extra steps, it's just an application form and an interview. Next slide, please. So you've got through the application form, hopefully. And I guess tips on the interview. So you kind of, you come in and it will all feel quite nervous because, you know, you'll see a picture of the king or whatever on the wall, but you know, everyone's very friendly. You start with an OR exercise. So this is basically essentially a problem-solving exercise. You don't need any prior knowledge about government. It's just purely testing your ability to think on your feet and solve problems. You don't need to know your technique kind of inside out, although it is helpful. They are just testing your problem-solving ability. So you'll be given a sheet. Could we skip to the sheet? So this is an example of a problem structuring test. So you'll be given this, you'll be given about half an hour to come up with a 5-minute presentation and response. So this one is about disease outbreaks. So, you know, how could you allocate resources to return the nationals in the case of a deadly disease outbreak? What things would you have to consider? So some questions you could consider is what resources need allocating, how many individuals, how can we plan for it, can we use forecasting, simulation, anything like that? Where can we get access to the information and what could go wrong? So if you go back to the other one, so that's the OR exercise. Once you've done the OR exercise, there'll be 2 questions. The first one is a question about a technique you've applied, and a good thing about the interview as well, it mirrors the application form, so you'll be asked on the things that you've written about. So the first one will just be about name a time where you've applied an operational research technique, so usually coursework works pretty well for that. I assume you have quite a lot of technical coursework. There's then an achieving impact with analysis question, which is more based on how you communicate your analysis to people and how you present things. There's then a question on working together and managing the quality service, but you can refer back to the examples that you've written for your application form in the interview, so you don't have to come up with stuff on the fly and you can prepare reasonably well for it. Just some tips. Have some new examples as well, just in case you feel more comfortable talking about those. Prepare your own questions to ask the interviewers. If you get stuck and you want to ask a question, just ask them what they're working on. Massive life hack. People love it when you're enthusiastic. Try to have some mock interviews before with your career service, and you need to focus on what you have done and achieved. So anything hypothetical, I would do this, I would do that. It needs to be sort of experience-based. And obviously it will be online. Video interviews are kind of the norm now, following COVID. Next slide, please. And the next one. So here's some useful resources. So we've got the GAWS website and the Civil Service Jobs website. We've got the Civil Service Success Profile. So when you open that PDF document, there'll be a level 1, which is the level that you would need to hit in order to enter. And basically just read through those examples and try to understand how your experience fits into that. We've also got guidance on how to complete the statements as well, and we've got a link to our socials as well. So next slide. And there we go, I think that's over. So we've got our email addresses there. We're more than happy to be contacted. But general questions about recruitment, it's best to go to the Analytical Student Placement at DWP. So I think we've got about half an hour left, which means we've got loads of time for questions and even more hints and tips for the application form. So I think we'll end it there.
Okay.